Welcome to video number 2 in the Quick Start video series for 90-Second Website Builder. Hi again, it's Greg Hughes. In this episode, I want to cover a couple of things that have to do specifically with your first page that you're building with 90-Second Website Builder. Remember, the Site Manager is the area of the software where we can manage the pages of our website. And when you first launch 90-Second Website Builder, of course, it gives you a starting page called Index. It's really important that your home page or your default page is called Index, and it needs to be called Index with all lowercase letters. Now, without getting too technical, I'll just tell you that almost every web server in the world recognizes this name, Index, as a home page, and so it's important that your home page is called that. There are some servers that recognize other names, but Index is the most universal and the safest one to use. The rest of your pages can be named anything you want because you'll just be linking to them with your navigation or with your text links or however you want to take people to those pages. But your default page, that is the page where people start when they browse to your domain on the internet, is really important, and it's important that the server knows where to start your visitors, and so it's always called Index. In my case, it's index.html. Now, you might not see the extension in your site manager. I can see the extension of this page, index.html, because I've chosen to show the extensions. Here's how I did that. I went to the Tools, Options, and I simply checked this box that says Show Page Extensions in the Site Manager. Now, why would I do that? Well, because 90-Second Website Builder is capable of making other kinds of web documents. They're not all HTML. I can make a PHP page, which is a special kind of page for creating things like forms and other interactive data. And since I do that sometimes, I like to see my page extensions. Again, you don't have to do that, but for me, I like to see them. So let's get started because we've just opened up a blank project in 90-Second Website Builder. We've got our starting index page, and now it's time to design a site. The very first thing that I do is I like to choose the size of the pages that I'm going to be using on this website. Here's how I do it. I go to the page properties, which I can do by simply right-clicking on an empty area of the canvas, go to page properties, and I like to choose the target screen size for my website. Now here's the one I use, 1024 by 768. That's the average size of a screen that most people are going to be using when they look at your website. Now, of course, not everybody has the same size monitor or the same size browser windows, but it's a good idea to pick one that's sort of universal and accommodates the most people. And these days, this is pretty much the best size. You don't have to do that, though. You could make a smaller website or a larger website. People certainly have bigger monitors these days. The problem is not everyone does. So, depending on the project you're working on, it's a good idea to pick a sensible size, and my favorite is this one. Now what happens is this size, the target screen size of 1024, actually gives me a page width of 994, which you can see here. If I was to change that to something like 800 by 600, it gives me a little different page width, about 770. The other thing this does is this changes the ruler setting you see at the top of my page. Watch, I'll click OK, and watch what the ruler does. You see it shrunk down to this 770. This means that the area of the canvas I'm going to be developing my webpage in falls within the ruler. I want to make sure I don't go past the ruler if I'm going to be making my web page this big. But for me, like I said, I like to use a little bit bigger. I go to 1024 so that I get a 994 page width. Click OK. Watch the ruler. As you can see, it's stretched out to here. So this is my area because I'm going to be building a web page around 994 pixels wide. So this is my work area here. All right. That's one of the first things I like to do, and I'll keep all of my pages in my website the same, and so I do that first. Another thing that's common to all of the pages in my website most of the time is the background. I like to start making my background first because I'm usually going to have that on every page. Now, you don't have to have a background. It's certainly appropriate and even common to have a white background for your website. But I like to have a little more texture and depth to mine, so I usually put an image or some kind of color in my background. There's a lot of ways to do that, so get ready to be creative. For starters, we could just grab the image tool like this and just draw a box onto the canvas and go find an image we think would make a good background. Here's one called back. So this could be my background if I worked with it a little bit. It's a little bit small. You'll notice it doesn't stretch all the way across here. And this is the type of image that I could stretch if I wanted to. I could go like this and there, make that be my background. Let's click F5 on my keyboard because that's how we preview our work in a browser, just to see what the website looks like. Here's what the website would look like in a browser. Now, there's a couple of problems with this background, and one is it doesn't fill the screen very well. For people who have really big browsers, like Windows like this, it wouldn't be a great background because there's a lot of empty space here. I'd have to really stretch it, and ultimately I wouldn't know how big to stretch it because everybody's got a different browser size. There's a better way to do it than to have this image be my background and to try and stretch it forever. So let me delete this image and show you a great trick for creating backgrounds. It's something that's built into the page properties again. So let's go back to page properties by right-clicking and going here, and go to the Style tab. And the Style tab actually has a section for creating page background. Right now, of course, it's a solid color called white. And so you can see that. I could change that to any color I want to. If I'd rather have a solid color that's something like this, I click OK, and now you can see that's my page background. Simple enough. But let's look at some other things. Go to Page Properties, Style, and instead of having a solid color, I could actually have a gradient. Two colors. Colors that gradiate, if you will, from one to the other. So if I was to choose black at this end and white at this end, and then decide that I want to gradiate this vertically or horizontally. Let's go vertically, that's top to bottom. Watch what happens to my background with these two colors. I'm gradiating from white to black. Another great way to make a background. Let's go back. So that's a gradient. But one of the things I like to do, and by the way, you could make it transparent, which is just a solid black background. But one of the things I like to do is I like to use either a solid color like this, or I like to use an image that repeats. Here's what I mean. So let's go to image. I'm going to make my background be an image that I already have. Let's go back and get that image that I had before. I'll click here, select that image, and go like this. And I'm going to make this image be my background. Watch. Well, as you can see, it's really no different. At least it doesn't look any different than when I just drug it out of her with the image tool. But it actually is quite different. Watch what happens when I click F5. You'll see I still have a problem with that image. Even though it's in the background, it doesn't really stretch and move with the background. It doesn't accommodate the size of the window when people have different browser sizes. I want it to really fill the window. So here's how we do that. Let's go back to Page Properties. Style, there's my image. I'm going to tell the software to repeat my background horizontally. That is from left to right. Technically, it's called a repeat X. And when I do that and click OK, you'll see that my background continues to repeat across the page infinitely. No matter how far I wish to stretch the canvas, that background will always be there. It's a great trick. I'm going to click F5 so you can see what I mean. So now here's my web page, and as you can see, no matter how big the window gets, that background is going to keep repeating all the way across. Now I happen to pick an image that works great for repeating X backgrounds. You'll have to find an image that works for you if that's the way you want to do it. I've got a few others. Let's just play around a little bit. So what if I chose an image like this? Now this is a very narrow image that I would use for my background, and I want to show you what it looks like if I didn't repeat it. See, this is a very narrow image. It's only about 10 or 20 pixels wide, and it's very long. It comes down to here. So watch what happens when I repeat this image in my background. I'm going to go to Page Properties, Style, Background. There's the image I chose, and I'm going to repeat in a horizontal direction. There we go. Now this makes a great background that repeats infinitely. Again, this is an art and a science, so it's a judgment call on how you want to make your background. That's just the way I like to make my backgrounds. But again, you can make it a solid color or a gradient or transparent or use one of the images you have. They don't have to repeat. Just get creative and start making backgrounds in your website. It's a great way to get started using 90-Second Website Builder to build your website. In the next few videos, we'll move on in our web design and start adding images and text and navigation and all kinds of fun things we want to put on our website. Continue to play with the software. If you have any questions, of course, always get in contact with me and let me know if I can help you use this great program we call 90-Second Website Builder.